What's going on? What's going on, everybody? It is the Balls and Bros podcast, YouTube channel, clip, however you're watching this. This is the first episode. I am Will, BJ, William, whatever you want to call me. That's Casino or KC. Say hi, Casino.
What's up? How's it going, everybody? Welcome in.
So your name is KC, but I don't think I've ever called you that in your entire life.
I can't recall the last time you called me by my real name.
Yeah, your Casino. Even when I'm talking to other people about you, it's Casino. It always has been Casino. So that's only how we'll refer to you on this show.
And I appreciate that. So it's on the glass.
So this will be originally the show is going to be called All Encompassing Sports, but that was either taken or too long of a title. So we settled on Balls and Bros. I feel like we should start by saying like the catchphrase should be like, oh, like we're the bros. Let's talk about the balls. I don't know. But so today we're doing the NFL preview. We're talking about all things NFL before the season starts. We're recording this on Sunday. We'll have it up on Wednesday. So the NFL season starts tomorrow. First game of the year is Buffalo Bills versus Los Angeles Rams. Apparently, that is the favorite for both conferences, for the AFC and the NFC. I just have no faith. There's like weird reports coming out that apparently Matthew Stafford has like a arm injury that they're saying is going to linger all season, but he's saying it's fine. But I don't know. Whenever you hear like lingering an injury, I feel like that's never a good sign.
Never. I mean, even if it's just minor, those things can progress over the season. And, you know, that could be one game could be your chance to the Super Bowl or not. So, I mean, even minor things are nothing to pass over.
Yeah. And then so the Buffalo Bills really didn't lose anybody. I'm looking at my sheet right here. They signed Stephon Diggs to an extension, and then they also signed Von Miller from the Rams. So he's going back to the Rams to play them, but now as an opponent. Do you think Von Miller will be as impactful for the Bills as he was for the Rams? Because he signed a 6-year, $120 million contract, which is crazy because I feel like will be out of his prime by the time that contract ends.
I don't think he's going to be as effective. It may look like it when you're watching the team as a whole, the defense as a whole, because I mean, the Bills still have one of the best defenses in the league. So, I mean, yeah, when you look at the defense as a whole, you'll probably be looking at him going, oh, wow, like he's Von Miller going crazy doing Von Miller things. But I do think he's past his prime, and he's personally going to decline.
He's 33 going into this year, been in the league for 12 years. I feel like Tom Brady has given like everybody else a false sense of like, I can play forever. I can play for 45 years. But the reason why Tom Brady has been playing for so long and he's still active at 45 years old is because he like avoids hits, and he's very smart at that. I don't know if somebody who gives hits or takes hits can like play for that long.
I don't think so. I mean, we'll just look at running backs in a whole. Like by this time, they're either, unless you're, one of these freak of nature running backs, you're almost out of the league at this point.
Well, yeah, Emmitt Smith survived that long because he never took like the big shots either. But I don't think you can play like that, especially in today's NFL. Like they say,
I literally was about to say today's football, that's not going to happen.
No, because they say the average length of a running back now is like 4 years. Like by the time you're 26, 27, you're like damaged goods, quote unquote. So
right. And with all these people saying, the football league's gotten soft, the NFL's gotten soft, it still doesn't matter. You're still taking heavy hits. These guys are bigger, stronger, faster. So even with all these safety precautions in place, you're still going to get hit. Going back to Miller there, I just don't think he's going to get there. It's past his prime.
So do you want to start by going over who do you think wins the division, or stick with the offenses and defense and pick your top 5 of both?
Let's go with divisions. I mean, that's going to be probably the easiest thing. Most people are going to want to see what's going on with their teams and their division, and what we think, at least.
Okay, so let's start in the AFC West. Who do you think wins the AFC West? Do you think there's any wild card teams coming out of that division? Or, yeah, do you think, I mean, this is probably what, the AFC West, and then probably the NFC West are the two hardest divisions this year, much like they were last year.
Yeah, 100%. I do think, I mean, yeah, the Chiefs have been dominant in the AFC West for a while now, but I mean, the Chargers just they're loaded. Herbert is phenomenal. That's going to be kind of a toss up. I think it comes down to their head-to-head games. It's going to be decided by one game, in my opinion, towards the end of the season. But I do think personally, I think the Chargers come out on top. I feel like they're a little younger. It's a fresher team. I think that's the way to go. So definitely with that being said, 100%, I do think the Chiefs will make at least a wild card spot, probably the first wild card spot in that division. I don't know about you, but so
now the wild card team in this division is, well, actually both of them. So the Raiders got better on offense with adding Davante Adams, and then their defense is still the big question mark, but they didn't really add anybody of note to their defense this offseason, unless I'm forgetting some huge name they signed. But I think Davante Adams was the big name, right?
Yeah, I don't think, let me see the notes here. I don't think anything else defensive wise, at least in the free agency. Yeah, I think Davante Adams is that. So defensively, and just the two powerhouse offenses from the Chargers and Chiefs, it's going to be a tough one for the Raiders, even though they are much better this year than previous years. I just don't think that I think those two other teams still have the top spots in that division.
So looking here, the Raiders they gave an extension to Max Crosby on the D line. Same with Chandler Jones. They signed. They also added some guys for their D tackle position. So they got two defensive ends that they either re-signed or signed to an extension and then signed a deal with. And then their linebacking core, their cornerbacks, their safeties, all like no improvements on those aspects of the field. So I feel like they're going to get real hurt in the back end, especially when you're playing, like you said, in the division with Patrick Mahomes, now Russell Wilson, which we got to talk about the Broncos, and then playing against Justin Herbert. Like, you're going to get absolutely annihilated on your back end if you can't put pressure up front, which, I mean, they might be able to with Chandler Jones and Max Crosby, but it's not a guarantee.
They picked up Chandler Jones. What was his deal here? He agreed to a 3 years, $51 million. Like, that's
Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, and talk about another person being a little bit older, but they are better, but I still, and that division is just stacked. You might see actually
this.
Do you think they could get 3 people out of that division?
I think all 3 come out of that division. Cause I mean, honestly, in the AFC, maybe only the AFC North has the possibility of sending 2 teams. I mean, we'll talk about your division because you're a Patriots fan. I'm an Eagles fan, but I think both East divisions on both the AFC and the NFC, I think both those only send 1, even though it looks like it's going to be 2 before the start of the season. But then when you start breaking down playoffs, like, I just don't see it. I don't think the Dolphins are going to be nearly as good as everybody thinks they are, because I have no faith in Tua whatsoever. I don't either.
That hip injury is still going to haunt him.
Yeah, and you see all these videos coming out of them just being like, look at this bomb to Hill. Every single one of those videos you've seen, that ball has been underthrown by 10 yards. And Hill is coming back to it and like making diving catches. And they're like, look at this.
He's one of the only people in the NFL that can make that catch because he's fast enough to get back.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to do. But the weird thing is, when he was on the Kansas City Chiefs, so we're talking about Tyreek Hill, most of his run after the catch plays came on like bubble screens. It wasn't like deep bombs. So it's weird that it seems like the Miami Dolphins, so far from what we've seen in practice videos and preseason, they're just trying to get him on like streaks down the field, when why wouldn't you just do bubble screens or little slants and just get him like in space so he can outrun everybody?
Yeah, I agree with that. And then, so as you were saying, though, so let's move over to another division here. Let's go with the AFC North.
Before we do that, the only team so far we haven't talked about is the Broncos. This might be a shock to you, but I think they're my pick to be in the Super Bowl in the AFC. I think so. The playoff teams I think coming out of this division are the Chiefs, the Chargers, and then the Broncos. So I think the Raiders nearly miss it like they did last season, where, you know, that game came down to whoever won that last game got the last wild card spot. But I think it is the Broncos. It's followed the formula like of the new NFL, which a couple years ago, it was like for a decade, we had the teams that you stacked up your entire roster, right? You like built the Legion of Boom, and then you had Russell Wilson on like a rookie contract, and then you just went to the Super Bowl, right? Like it was like that for Jared Goff. It was like that for the Eagles who won their Super Bowl with Wentz. It was like all these, the pattern or the formula to get to the Super Bowl was rookie quarterbacks on rookie deals. You stack the team around them, and then you just make a run at the Super Bowl. Now it seems, especially in the past 3 years, the formula has flipped where you build up your all-star roster, and then you just add a aging quarterback in the offseason. We look at the Buccaneers with Tom Brady. Last year, we had the Rams with Matt Stafford. And this year, why couldn't it be Russ and the Broncos?
Well, and also their defense is another top-notch defense. I have their defense roughly around 5 in the league. And so, I mean, that brings up a good point. That I mean, it's hard to go against the Bills. Being a Patriot fan, I know, you know, that division, the Bills are going to come out of that division. Like, that's my pick for them at least. But outside of the Bills, the AFC Championship games can be either the Bills versus one of those 3 teams out of
my only reservations on the Chargers, which seems to be the early season pick, is haven't we been doing this with the Chargers for 20, 15 years at this point, where it's always they have the most talented roster. They have, even back when they had LaDainian Tomlinson, they had Phillip Rivers, they had Keenan Allen, like they had Antonio Gates, like always stacked teams, top 5 offense, top 5 defense, and they just always just could not get it done. And then they reset, and now it just feels like the exact same thing all over again.
I see your point there, but also no hate against Phillip Rivers, because he was a good quarterback, really good quarterback. But I think Justin Herbert is going to have a better career than Phillip Rivers. So I think that will be the X factor. He's been getting better and better. I mean, this is a big proving year for him, in my opinion. So this would be a big year to watch Justin Herbert and the Chargers, because I agree with you. Like the last 15 years has kind of been that trend, really good team, but they can't get past that hump. And I mean, the quarterback change may have been the thing. Younger Herbert, I think, is quite talented there. So that might be my pick for coming out of there, out of at least the AFC or that division champion. But I think come playoff time, Russell having a little bit more playoff experience, and same with Mahomes having a little more playoff experience, that could benefit them to get past the Chargers.
I have a sheet that has all the head coaches on it. For some reason, I can't find the Chargers coach on it. Who is the Chargers head coach?
Off the top of my head, I can't tell.
I'm drawing a blank, but that might be one of the things that holds the Broncos back from going to the Super Bowl is they have the rookie head coach, the Daniel Hackett. Like, who knows if he is even a good coach? Who knows? So that might be the thing that stops them from going to the Super Bowl. But I think it from the AFC. I mean, it's either got to be one of the AFC West teams or the Bills. Like, who else is even in that discussion? The Ravens, maybe?
The Ravens or the Bengals, whoever comes out of winning that division, which I think is a pretty close one. But and then I mean, the Colts or Titans, but whoever wins that division, they're probably going to be out in that first round. they're not going to make it far.
So by following that formula that I said worked for Tom Brady, worked for Matt Stafford, and I think works for the Broncos, let's move over to the AFC South, because the Colts did the same thing. Stacked up their whole team, loaded it all up, and then got a veteran quarterback in Matt Ryan. So does Matt Ryan still have it in him to get a team to the Super Bowl?
I don't. I don't think so. I mean, Matt Ryan, he's not a bad quarterback. Like if he was out on free agent, I'm sure there's plenty of teams that would pick him up. And then obviously, being a Patriot fan, I watched that game heavily on that comeback. But where people argue with Matt Ryan and say that, oh, well, look what he did. He did in the Super Bowl. He almost beat the Patriots, and it was a crazy comeback by Brady and the whole team. But the weapons that he had in Atlanta that year was just, you could give the ball to 4 or 5 people, off of 2 yards, and they would make a play. So I'm not saying that Matt Ryan's bad, because he's not, but that whole Matty Ice thing that he got for that year, just, I mean, they're going to be successful. My pick is for the Colts to win that division. But to go past that,
no, because I mean, their offensive weapons are Michael Pittman and who else? Like, who else would step up? I don't trust
rookie. So
I don't trust their offense outside of Matt Ryan. Like I don't feel like you can judge an offensive line of a team based on them playing with Carson Wentz, because Carson Wentz has the bad habit of being the only quarterback in the NFL who thinks that if you hold onto the ball longer, good things will happen, and it never does. So know
that firsthand.
As an Eagles fan, it was always just like, why are you holding onto the ball for 5 seconds longer than anybody else in the league? And he did that the same thing with the Colts last year, where it was just like, and we've already seen it in the 3 preseason games he's played in. It's just like he takes the worst sacks in the league. It always makes his offensive line look so much worse than they actually are, because he's getting swarmed by 10 guys. But it's like, but he also hung onto the ball for 7 seconds when the next slowest guy to get rid of the ball holds onto the ball for like 3.5 seconds. It's ridiculous. Okay, so now that we have stopped with the Colts, let's move on to the Titans. And the craziest thing about the Titans, which I did not remember, is they finished with the best record in the AFC last year, which I feel like is forgotten. I feel like they don't even have a shot to make the playoffs this year. I think they lost AJ Brown. Derrick Henry has another year on him where he's literally their entire offense for an entire year. He had the injury last year where he missed a couple games. Now you have Ryan Tannehill. I mean, Malik Willis has looked really good this preseason, but I put no stock in preseason games whatsoever. Like most teams, they're throwing out guys who don't even make an NFL team after preseason. So like we just had the Malik Willis had a really good game, and Justin Fields had a really good game in preseason. I throw both those out the window because I don't think either of them will do anything this year in the NFL. Do you think Ryan Tannehill stays the starter for the Titans the entire year?
I think they do, because I think they'll be chasing that division. I just think it's hard to toss out Tannehill, because he's shown that he can get your team where it needs to be. But I think he'll stay, but that team's not going to do well. Moving off from offense to defense, I mean, they're Landry just tore his ACL. I mean, he's out for the season. That's the leading pass rusher for them. And I mean, you can't just keep throwing it on Henry to try to win games.
Well, also, it just becomes another thing where it's like they lost literally their only weapon. Derrick Henry's more beat up than he was last year. And last year he was already beat up. Like, what is their offense? The same question I had with the Colts. Like, what even are they?
Right. That is the weakest division in the AFC for sure. So, I mean, what do you think they're doing so bad that they just pull Tannehill and see what else they got?
I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's like at a certain point in the season, like when do you just decide like the season's lost anyways? Let's just get this guy some reps. If he is going to
Mhm.
be the future, which I think he is, like Tannehill, we've seen the peak of Tannehill. We saw it the year where Brady's last year with the Patriots, where they knocked him out of the playoffs, like,
Ugh.
and then last year where they were the number one seed in the AFC and then did nothing in the playoffs. Like, what what more do you honestly think, if you're a fan of the Tennessee Titans, that Ryan Tannehill can take you into a deep playoff run, potentially to the Super Bowl, potentially to win the Super Bowl? Like, I don't think
E-
there's any
Even if he
shot.
was, even if he was in his prime, I still don't think that's going to happen because those other four teams are just too stacked, too dominant. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. And then the wild card potential in this division is, how do you feel about the Jaguars? Because we've seen, especially in a Doug Peterson run, team we saw with the Eagles, where they had the second year with Carson Wentz, took that whole team to the Super Bowl. And, we obviously saw how that played out. But Doug Peterson is an established coach. He's a good coach. He's a million times better of an NFL coach than Urban Meyer. Like,
That's very true.
he might be one of the worst NFL coaches of all time. And still, like, Trevor Lawrence had a bad season, but he had like bright spots and like highlights and was doing the best to be somewhat competent on a team that was just a giant mess. The Jaguars have a competent defense. So if they signed Christian Kirk from he used to be on the Cardinals. So they spent big money on the offense. They have a good offensive line. They have a good defense, at least top 15. Could the Jaguars surprise people?
I mean, I think they're going to surprise people they are going to have a much better team this year. As you were talking about Lawrence's, and with what he had to deal with, in the previous years, he doesn't give up. He was there for he was actually trying to still better himself as a quarterback, even though his team was garbage. So with everything you just said, I do think that they will surprise people. They will have a better record this year. They could even possibly even take take this 2 spot in their division, but I don't think it's enough to win that division. But it definitely will surprise people. They're going to actually play tougher games. You can't just go into one of their games and just bypass them, because they will. It's a trap game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because they have gotten much better, and everybody's like, oh, it's the Jaguars. It's the Jaguars. We're gonna beat them. They have gotten better, and just going off of how Lawrence came about and really actually tried with a really bad roster. I think that they will be much better this year, and they will be a trap team for a lot of teams out there. So Colts, Titans, keep your head up, because you go down to Jacksonville, that might surprise you.
Well, and then we have to talk about the team that I don't think there's even a question who finishes last in this division. I mean, the Houston Texans, they have David Mills at quarterback, who was better than I feel like people thought he would be last year. But that was also that thing where it's always like reminds me of the Matt Flynn. Remember, like a couple of years ago, where Russell Wilson was on the Seahawks, or it was right before he was on the Seahawks, or no, it was the year he was on the Seahawks.
On the Seahawks.
And they signed Matt Flynn from the Packers because he had that week 16 or week 17 game where he like threw for 5 touchdowns. He had like 500 yards, and he just like lit up. I can't remember what team he was playing, but it was like the Packers. But you remember the game I'm talking about, where the Packers were resting everybody. Matt Flynn came in and fucking lit it up, and then he signs that huge contract in Seattle, and then he gets benched for Russell Wilson, and the rest is history. I feel like he has that kind of like vibe where it's just like nobody knew what to expect, and then he comes in and lights it up, and now we have tape on him, and then it's just going to be he's going to be Case Keenum. Like he's going to be the guy who had that 1 year where everybody was like, damn, like this guy can play. And then all of a sudden he's, a backup or the third string on the Browns like 2 years from now. I just think that's it's harsh, but.
No, I mean, that's kind of how those draws happen sometimes, man. But yeah, I agree with you on that. There, it all went downhill when they got rid of Hopkins. Like,
Yeah.
That was like, okay, they put the order in for their coffin, and
well, they had, I mean, when you think about it, they had Deshaun Watson at his peak, DeAndre Hopkins at his peak, JJ Watt at his peak, and just nothing to show for it. And then now they're even
barely get in the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah. And now Deshaun Watson we'll talk about him when we get to the Browns, but he's gone. DeAndre Hopkins is gone. JJ Watt's gone. And they have now David Mills and a tougher division than when those guys were in it. Like, I mean, I would not be surprised if the Colts, the Jaguars, or the Titans won first place in that division. I would be absolutely shocked if the Texans came anywhere close to winning 4 or 5 games.
I say 4.
Yeah. Like if we're recording in Vegas, if we had to put money on it, I would put way more money on them winning less than 4 games than any of the other teams in that division winning. Like, yeah. I think they're going to be who is going to be a worse team this year than the Texans? The candidates are the Seahawks, the Browns, the Falcons, and the Giants.
I think the Giants would be the closer one. Personally, I mean, you know them a little better. They're in your division, but I just,
yeah,
I just think they're trash.
I think it's the Falcons. I mean, when we get to talking about the Falcons and you go through their roster, they're starting Marcus Mariota at quarterback. The Calvin Ridley got suspended by the NFL for the gambling thing. Like, it's literally, they have Kyle Pitts. They have a terrible offensive line. They have no defense, and they're starting Marcus Mariota. Like, I think that's as bad, if not worse, than the Texans. But we'll hold off going to the NFC because now we have to go to the AFC North. Now, the Bengals, I feel like, is a team that either there's 2 sides of this coin. Either everybody's saying they'll be back in the AFC Championship or just miss the playoffs entirely. I feel like there's no middle ground.
Right. I agree with you there.
So they clearly are the ones that are going to win this division.
Yeah. So you said the Bengals, right?
Yes.
That's who you had. Yeah. I mean, the Ravens, they're there, and a lot of people have them, but I don't have a lot of faith in, Lamar Jackson's amazing, he's too much of a running quarterback. And as we were talking about earlier, what a running backs, their lifespan is 4 years in the NFL. And then, so he's essentially a running back, not saying he has a bad arm, but he's more of a runner. And so that's why when he first got in the league, he was really, really strong, MVP, crushing it. But I think it's already starting to take a toll on his body. So I do think the Bengals still come out on top. I mean, Joe Burrow, he's still phenomenal. And I mean, he's up there. What are all of his weapons again?
He's got
Mixon, Chase, T. Higgins. Like, he's loaded. He's absolutely loaded on offense. That being a competent quarterback that he's proven. He got to the Super Bowl. And it was no fluke. He had great numbers doing it. I think the Bengals, even though a lot of people have the Ravens in a battle with them, I think the Bengals are at least, I honestly do think a 2-win team over the Ravens.
Well, and you look at the Bengals offseason, departures and who they signed, they lost nobody and just shored up their entire back end of their defense, signing Eli Apple, re-signing Eli Apple, Trey Flowers. They kept their safety. They gave him the franchise tag. And then they also re-signed Michael Thomas to play DB. So it's everybody they had last year from their defense, they just brought back. They didn't lose anybody except their tight end, but then they signed to a 1-year contract, Hayden Hurst, which is he that much different than CJ Uzma? No.
Right.
So it's everybody they lost nobody in the offseason. The few people they did lost, they brought in either competent, players who are the same or competent players, no bad players. So it's like they're running back the same exact team, and this team beat, a Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill Chief team that everybody thought was unstoppable. Like
Right.
that game is still one of the weirdest games I've ever watched in my life, because it was like, how is this happening? And then in the Super Bowl, they were what, 1, 2, maybe between 2 and 5 plays away from actually winning that Super Bowl. Like that game was a lot closer than I feel like people thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, he's got so much potential. And you're right. So again, people were saying Ravens and Bengals close. I don't think so. I think Bengals at least 2 wins over the Ravens, and they run away with that division.
Yeah,
do I think that they're going to be any of the AFC West teams or the Bills? It's going to have to be one of those, as you're just saying, the Chiefs Bengals game last year. It's going to have to be a tight game kind of thing.
Yeah. How do we feel about their defense? Because their defense, I feel like the offense, they have T. Higgins, they have Jamar Chase, and we saw both those guys just light it up last year. They obviously have Mixon, they have Burrow. So I feel like they have, they have a better offense than pretty much every team in the NFC. Like if you put them in the NFC, they're the number one offense without question, right? Like
I agree.
But in the AFC, because the AFC, like we were saying off mic or whatever, the AFC is just absolutely stacked this year. Like how many AFC teams would you take before you picked the first NFC teams in terms of like best teams in the NFL? Because AFC,
are we just going offense, or are we just going overall teams?
No, overall teams. So in the AFC, we have the Bills, the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Broncos. Would you take the Rams before you would take any of those teams? Maybe the Broncos?
Maybe the Broncos. That's it.
So yeah, you're taking, and even then I would put them on the same level. So you're taking 5 to 6. You can make a case for maybe 7 if the Ravens are actually good AFC teams before you're getting to one NFC team. So that might be the biggest thing hurting the Bengals is they're just playing in the tougher conference. Like they're going to have to go against Titans.
As you started off with the whole podcast, you said I was a Patriots fan. People keep asking me, "Oh, how do you think they're going to do? How do you think they're?" I tell them, try not to be biased. Like I do think they're going to be better than some people think, but I'm saying 9-8, 10-7. But I'm like, there's no way they're going to make the playoffs. There's no way.
No,
if you want to have a shot in the AFC, I think 11 is the benchmark that you have to hit if you want to make the playoffs in the AFC. You have to hit at least 11. It's just too stacked. They're going to those AFC teams. I think will just roll over any of those NFC teams, and then just beat up on their in division rivals. But it's just stacked. And you're right. Out of the NFC, the Rams are really the only legitimate threat. Even with the picks that I have for the North, South, and East in the NFC, like it doesn't matter. The AFC is stacked. I'd be shocked if even with the Rams being good and whoever comes out of the NFC to make to make the Super Bowl, in my opinion, I'd be shocked if the AFC champion did not win the Super Bowl. Absolutely shocked.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah, this is one of those, I feel like for a couple years there, it was the NFC was the harder, conference, but it has completely swung in the past, 2-3 years where the AFC is just
3 years.
Just stack. So the last team we need to talk about in this, or the last 2 teams we need to talk about in this division are the Steelers, who this is the first year without Roethlisberger, and then the Browns, the first year with Deshaun Watson, who is only getting how many games? He's only getting 11, right? He's missing 11.
Yeah, 11 games.
So he will miss the first 11. They're going to have Tyrod Taylor be the starting quarterback week 1, where they will play the Panthers with Baker Mayfield, which should be a highlight of week 1, him going back there.
Interesting game. Yep.
Yeah. So between those 2 teams, the Steelers feel like they're kind of in a rebuild, but they also had a top 2, top 3 defense last year. And Kenny Pickett, he looks like the real deal. he looks like he can play, but they're going to be starting Mitchell Trubisky, which yeah.
All right.
Which I don't know why. This is one of those things where it's like the Titans thing where you have Ryan Tannehill, but Ryan Tannehill has at least gotten you the number one seed in the AFC. He's won you playoff games. It's like, what do you see in Mitch Trubisky that you wouldn't just be like, we can just throw Kenny Pickett in there and just see what we have? Like, Mitchell Trubisky is not going to be your franchise quarterback. Like, why are you doing this stopgap?
Yeah, I don't get when teams do that. I mean, you literally just said it, that Trubisky's not their long term. Whether he was a good quarterback, bad quarterback, decent, whatever, he's not their long term option. He knows that, and the franchise knows that. So why are we sticking with him? Why not give the other guy a shot? It's, as you said, rebuild. It's a rebuild season. So why pump the brakes on this? Let's see what he has early season. I mean, I know you can't win the Super Bowl in the first couple of games, but you could definitely lose it, which,
yeah,
I mean, let's just be honest, they're not going to be good anyway. So,
well, and even if they're it's always the Mike Tomlin thing where he's never had a losing season, but he's had a lot of 8-8 or 9-8 seasons. So can you see this? Like, I can see this Steelers team winning 9-8 or like going 9-8, but you're in the division with the Bengals and the Ravens, and both those teams have the potential to win 12, 11, 10 games. So you're still going to be the third best team in your division, even with a winning record, because 9-8 is still a winning record. So,
right. and that's the same thing what I said with the Patriots. Like, it's that same thing on how I feel for my team. Like, 10-7, but it doesn't matter if you're not an 11 win team. In my opinion, is the benchmark. You're not making the playoffs. So why? You're not going to get there. I mean, just face it. It would be the shock of the NFL if the Steelers, even though you said that, good defense, Tomlin, he's been in it for years. He knows what to do. He knows his players, but I don't see how you could be like, okay, I know we're going to make the playoffs. So, let's give Trubisky his shot. It's a rebuild. The division's too hard. The conference is too hard. That this is the prime time to get him in there and get him to have some reps.
So I did like a little NFL record projection kind of thing where I put like all the games and to see who would win what games and like kind of did that whole thing, right? So I have the Steelers going 9-8, but even then I still have the Ravens going 11-6, and then the Bengals going 12-5. So even then with a 9-8 record, like you're not making it, because in the AFC West, you have to imagine Chiefs get at least 10, Chargers get at least 10. I would honestly say, and then either the Raiders or Broncos get at least 10. So right there, you're still below, like we were saying, 3 teams. Yeah, so
man, that division is going to be the best division in football.
I know.
It's going to be so
honestly, would you be, to go quickly back to the AFC West, would you be shocked if all those teams like split with each other so they all can theoretically end up with a 10-6, or I'm sorry, a 10-7, 11-6 record? That's honestly possible in that division. And would you be shocked? Who's the weakest link in that division is the Raiders, who massively improved over the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to beat a team twice. It is. And that's a really good point. I mean, it theoretically it could happen that way. These are all just solid teams. That's going to be my favorite every Sunday, most outside of the other games, but the Sunday that's going to be my division to watch. That's who's going to win the Super Bowl. And again, I still, being a Pats fan, watching the Bills play plenty. I mean, the Bills are going to be really tough, but what's got going for the West is they're going to be playing each other and a whole bunch, and that's some high caliber football. They're going to be ready. You have to have your A game pretty much. So was that at least 6 games of your season, you're playing one of the best teams in NFL.
Yeah. Well, and it does that weird, It does that weird, like NFC West kind of thing where each team like has the other team's number. Like for some reason, the Raiders play the Chiefs really well, but then the Chiefs play the Chargers really well. And now who knows with the Broncos coming in, who will, I feel like it'll be the thing where, yeah, each of them just have the other one's number, but then so the Chargers have like the Raiders number, and then the Raiders have the Chiefs number. And then, yeah, it all just goes back and forth where they're all just have, they won and lost half the games in their division. But let's go to probably the most noteworthy team this offseason, just from all the Deshaun Watson crazy stuff around him. Let's go to the Browns, who will be starting Jacoby Brissett for the first. I thought it was Tyrod Taylor. It's not. He's still on the Chargers.
You're right. It's Jacoby.
Jacoby Brissett. Yeah, who will be playing in Deshaun Watson's absence for the first 11 weeks of the season. Like, realistically, what are the Browns' chances this year?
0,
especially in that division.
I mean, in my opinion, I think 0, less than 5, probably. I mean, Jacoby, he played for my team, and watching him go, and they play for the Colts. He's not a bad quarterback, but he's not your top tier guy by any means. I mean, is he a decent backup? Yeah, but I mean, how far can you go with a backup unless you have some crazy phenomenon happen? Like, I just don't see. There's too much turmoil going on with that franchise right now that it's going to cloud the locker room. Their heads aren't going to be in it. Mm-hmm. I think it's just all going to spiral down. And they're not going to really go anywhere. Nobody's going to really care to play as hard as they want to. I know that it's their job, it's a profession, and some probably will. But a team in the whole, I think it's going to be tough for them to get out of the cloud in the locker room and actually get to the field and perform how they should to advance as far as they need to.
Well, everyone is also just assuming that Deshaun Watson, after not playing for 2.5 years, just comes right back in and then just starts lighting it up again.
Oh, like Deshaun Watson. I mean, and when we talked about Houston earlier, like, look at everybody that he had. Like, he had a good team. And
he had a good team, and they were still going. He had a couple of years where he was like 5-11 or something like that, where he was just putting up monster stats, and his team still wasn't winning. So, who's to say that doesn't also happen with this Browns team? Like, maybe he does come out and be good, but everything else surrounding that makes it so they are a 5-11 team, a 6-11 team, like a 5-12 team. Like, who knows? That's a real probability that Jacoby Brissett in the first 11 weeks, there's a chance he can go 5-6, but there's also a chance he can go he can win 1 or 2 games, and then they're just like, the season's gone. Like, who knows? It's like you said, Jacoby Brissett's a good quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback, but he's not going to be beating any of the AFC West teams or any of the AFC North teams. No. I mean, the Browns, you think they're just going to walk in, even with Deshaun Watson, they're going to have the Ravens, they're going to have the Bengals, they're going to have a Steelers defense that's still a top 2 defense in the league. So it's not like he's playing cupcakes.
Right. I mean, for all those teams outside of those top 5-6 teams in the AFC, rebuild. This is the time, because those other teams are just stacked. That's how I view it.
So they could win their first week. They play the Panthers. They could beat the Panthers, but then you have to factor in the Baker Mayfield revenge, tour and all that kind of stuff. He's going to be fired up. Then they play the Jets. So right there, they're potentially 2-0, right? So they're starting 2-0, even with Jacoby Brissett. But then they play the Steelers, which I think that's a loss. Just defense alone, I think that's a loss. Then they play the Falcons, which that's a win. Then they play, but here's where it gets bad. Then they play the Chargers, your team, the Patriots, the Ravens, the Browns, the Dolphins, the Bills, the Bucks. That's just like a murderer's row right there. They could start 3-1 and then lose the rest of the games till Deshaun Watson comes back. Like,
yeah, that's a high possibility.
Because, just in a 4-week span, they're playing Chargers, Patriots, Ravens, Bengals. Like, man. And even though your team's going to step back a little, I still don't think you can be like Jacoby Brissett is going into New England. And I think they're playing. Yeah. Or no, the regardless, I don't think the Jacoby Brissett led Browns are beating a Bill Belichick defense where he has time to plan for you. Like, no way.
None at all. None at all. I mean, not everybody. A lot of people are saying Belichick, washed up, he's getting older. Yeah, but you know what? His defense, even if they're a younger defense or whatever, whatever kind of defense he had, it's still a Bill Belichick defense. And that's going to be a tough team to beat, just on that basis alone. I mean, out of that stretch that you were saying, the Patriots would be their best shot to get another W in there, but that's still tough.
But still, I wouldn't put money on them beating the Patriots. Like, the Patriots are still going to do a defensive scheme to what the only person you really have to worry about on the Browns are Amari Cooper and Kareem Hunt, if he's still, but he seems like he wants out of Cleveland. So
yeah,
who knows? But so speaking of your team, let's move to your team, because we have talked about every division except the AFC, except for the AFC East. So this is the Bills division, like, bar none, right? Like, they're winning what? They're winning 13, 14, 15 games. Would that be shocking?
I would be shocked if they win less than 13.
Yeah. I think they're the clear best team in the NFL this year, right? Like, there's no even debate.
In regular season, I would say so. Yeah. And then, playoffs, it's playoff football. Things can happen. But regular season, they're going to have the best record. I mean, the division alone, like, again, Pats are not going to be bad. Miami's not going to be bad. Jets are afterthought. But it's the division is definitely weaker than them. It's not like they have a couple of the AFC West teams in there with them. So it's going to be their schedule. Their record is going to look much better. Not saying they're going to be a bad team, but that 13-14 win season going into the playoffs, you're going to be like, oh man, this is the team to beat. Again, playoffs football, those other teams are stacked. It's going to be tough to do, but definitely clear best record in football, in my opinion.
Yeah. And again, this is like the Bengals. They lost nobody. They only added people. We talked about Von Miller. I mean, he might be over the hill, but I don't think he's past his prime yet. I think we were saying that by the end of his contract he signed, he'll be way past the hill, but he'll still be an impact player on the line. And we'll get, he might disappear for a couple games, but I feel like we'll definitely have Bills games this year where it's just him taking over, and having a Von Miller style game where he's getting 3 sacks or hitting the quarterback every possession. And we'll definitely see Von Miller make an impact on this defense that was already stacked last year.
Right. I mean, and that's what I was kind of trying to touch on earlier is I still think he might be a little past his prime. You're saying he's right there on the fringe for you, but yeah, the defense is already really stacked and already really good that it's going to elevate him even more. Like, I don't think he's going to be much better than what he is, but the rest of the defense being as good as it is, it's going to open up spots for him to have some shining moments, to have some big plays in there. And obviously going to a new team is always going to re-spark you a little bit. We've seen it plenty with most of the time with offensive players, but that team's just got rid of nobody, added more people. It's a stacked team.
Well, going off what you're saying, which is a good point, is maybe even if he is past his prime, he doesn't need to be in his prime because there's so many people around him to lift him up.
Right.
Like, I'm sure having Aaron Donald on the line right next to him helped him a lot last year. And the Bills don't have that kind of guy on the defensive line, but they have that kind of defense like the Rams did last year, where even if he's lost a step, maybe he doesn't need that extra step because everybody around him is so good. I
agree.
So we're completely agreed on the Bills having, potentially the best record. I mean, it's really going to be the best record in the NFL is either going to be AFC West or the Bills, right? Like,
I think the Bills, because going off what you were saying earlier, there's a big possibility in that NFC West. They all just nil each other out, and you have
or the AFC West.
West, thank you.
Yeah.
Have their 10, 11, 11 wins, but they're just beating the crap out of each other. So I just think that the Bills have the easiest opportunity to have the highest win total. But that doesn't really mean anything when you get into the playoffs, because those other teams, they've been playing each other. They're high caliber teams. It's going to be,
they're battle tested.
If they're not, they're battle tested. Great way to put that. If they're not ready to go into the playoffs because they've been playing cupcakes for the most part, or teams that are, just right there in the middle, which is the division that they're in. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them. So that's, everybody's saying clear winner for them to win the Super Bowl, clear winner for them to have the best record, to make the playoffs, to have the 1 seed. But good luck.
You're not picking the Bills though to go to the Super Bowl, right? You said Chargers.
I will just pick the Bills. I will say the Bills, because maybe it's a little biased, go AFC East, but because you never know. Like, okay, now kind of flipping the coin a little bit, going with the AFC West, where they're beating the crap out of each other the entire time, could potentially be a lot of injuries. This is all, projecting here,
verbally,
but maybe they're beat up and the Bills come in fresh, so that's another way you got to look at that as well. I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to stick to the guns on here and say the Bills will make the Super Bowl out of the AFC. But that's a slim margin with all the teams coming out of the West. So, I picked the Bills. What about you?
Well, I honestly think it's going to be.
Oh, you said the Broncos.
I think the Broncos. I think that's we'll do like Super Bowl picks. I mean, we can wait till the end, but if this is the last.
Let's just hit up the AFC then, right here. Right.
So the AFC is. I honestly think it's going to be the Broncos. I just think it fits the formula the NFL has had. The Broncos had a great defense last year. They're going to have a better offense this year, but I do agree with you where it's just. The division might be the thing that makes it hard, because when Brady went to the NFC South, like really the only competition in that was the Saints, who did beat his ass and has beat his ass every time they played him. But it really hasn't, it hasn't affected him, obviously, because he won the Super Bowl. He went to the playoffs last year. The NFC West last year, we had a Seahawks team that wasn't as good as everybody projected, because you had the Russell Wilson injury, and then that team kind of fell apart. And we're going to see this year, like, they completely fell apart. Right. We had a Cardinals team who was really good during the beginning of the season. Everybody was picking them to go to the Super Bowl, and then the wheels kind of fell off that. And then we had obviously a 49ers team who went into Lambeau, beat Aaron Rodgers, but then it's just that thing where it's the Rams have San Francisco's number, Cardinals have their number, and then the 49ers have the Cardinals number, right? It's like that weird thing we talked about where it's just same thing with the AFC West and the NFC West. Each of those teams just have the other team's numbers. So when it came time for the Rams to fight, the 49ers, they just have had their number all year. So There you go. But I just think the Broncos are my pick. I think this is one of those cases where everybody is either picking the Bills or the Chargers, and it never works out that way. Last year, 0% of the people were picking the Bengals, and the Bengals are the ones that made it to the Super Bowl.
No, I get what you're saying, and I'm not saying Broncos bad pick. It's going to be one of those 4, maybe 5 teams, depending on what the Bengals do or Ravens do. But I guess totally see that. And, playoff football, as I've been saying, it's a different beast. It's a totally different beast. And there's a lot of factors you can take in that battle tested, as you said earlier, especially if they stay healthy. Not a bad pick in my mind. I'm sticking just with the Bills. It's tough to go play in Buffalo because especially if they get that number one seed, try to play in
Which, I
Buffalo.
mean, by all accounts, they will. Like even my pick in the AFC West, I feel, again, they're all going to be around that 10-11 range, where the Bills are going to be 13, 14, 15 range. So they're going to have the number one seed. And maybe that is the factor that makes it so you're playing in Buffalo in January, you're playing in it in December, like meaningful games, and they're just used to that. Like,
think about that. The Chiefs and the Broncos, like, they're used to playing in cold as well. But the Chargers, hey, LA, man, it is what it is. So, but it's still would be a tough feat for them to do. So I mean, we spend a lot of time on that AFC, but I mean, rightfully so. I mean,
I feel like the NFC, stacked. We're just going to blow through it because there's nobody to talk about in the NFC, really.
I don't have, with the AFC personally, I have clear winners in each one personally. Yeah. So I mean, let's hop on into it.
Well, first with the AFC, we still have to talk about your team, the Patriots, which you were trying to avoid. What the fuck is going on with the Patriots in terms of no offensive coordinator? Like that is in 2022 NFL, that is the dumbest, worst idea I've ever heard in my life. The offense is king. We're talking about the AFC West. We're talking about the Bills. We're talking about the Bengals, all because they have top 5 potential offenses. We're talking about the Texans, the Falcons, the Bears, the Seahawks being the worst because they have potential bottom 5 offenses. Offense rules 2022 NFL. So what the fuck are we doing with the Patriots where they're getting a defensive coordinator to call their offensive plays?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing?
I don't know.
That's the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. And honestly, that made it so it took away like 3 wins for me right there.
Like, all right. That's fair. That's fair. And so a lot of people going into that the last preseason game, or was it the last preseason game? Yeah, against the Raiders, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Was the last one.
Oh, you mean where their offense looked like absolute dog shit and they couldn't move the ball at all?
So like as my brother put it, and hopefully we're going off of this, that Belichick doesn't want to show McDaniels all of his plays, because they do play each other in December 18th. So I mean, we'll see.
He thinks he's playing 3D chess.
Yeah.
3D chess.
I will say this though, it is odd. I don't like the move. I mean, yeah, a lot of those coaches, and particularly in that franchise, Belichick, all those coaches help out. They always have. They've always kind of been with everybody. So that's kind of where he's trying to go with, not trying to set a certain thing. I see his approach, and I see why, because a lot of those coaches have been together. They know each other. Do I think it's the right call? No. I don't. It's too odd. It's too weird, especially going with mostly a defensive coordinator. Yeah, he was the head coach for a little bit in Detroit, but I mean, it's a bad move in my opinion. Doesn't make sense. I think that the team will do well, but you're saying it's offense heavy. This is another reason.
I don't think there's going to be any problem with your defense, but I think the offense, you guys are going to lose games because you're going to lose games 13-10.
Yeah, like our best receiver, arguably, is Parker, and he was thrown to the curb.
Yep.
So I mean, Jacoby Myers is good, but he's on an injury right now, coming off an injury. So I mean, that's gonna be an interesting one. I still think they're going to be all right, because you're saying it's Bill Belichick. His defense is always going to be good, but are we going to be able to score? A lot's going to have to come down to, we're going to be a run heavy team. Harris is going to have to do a lot of work. And then going from that, we just don't really have much options. I mean, tight end is nice, but our O-line's not that great, so they're going to have to pretty much be on the line the entire time, or quickly break off and Henry can go and get a run. But
You know what
Not
that
that.
long pause was? That was you trying to find reasoning within yourself
Yeah.
of why your offense isn't going to be shit. And you were searching for names. Dude, you're going to have the Patriots are going to be a top 5 defense and a top 32 offense. They're going to be 31st or 30th in the league. And you guys are going to end the season like 7-10. And everybody's going to be like, I mean, I'm surprised they won 7 because this is the lowest amount scored ever in the history of the NFL points wise. I think I believe in Mac Jones, but I don't believe in anything around Mac Jones. You guys are doing this dumb running back by committee, which last year barely worked, even though you guys were a run heavy team. Now you have a worse offensive identity, the same running back by committee. You have probably who has worse weapons in the NFL than the Patriots? It comes down to the Texans, the Seahawks, and I mean, the Seahawks still have DK Metcalf, the Bears, the Falcons, the Giants. I'd put you guys right in there in terms of worse offensive weapons. Like,
I agree. No, I concur with that. Go defense.
I mean, but still, I think it's generous being like, I still think you guys can win 8 games because even I'm like, that's literally just based on your team's history and Bill Belichick. But if I'm trying to like gun to my head reason how you win 8-9 games, I have no fucking idea. I have no idea. Like you're playing in the Bills. I think the Bills just whoop you twice a year. I think Dolphins, for some reason, the Dolphins have always had your guys' number. They win at least.
However, we do play them here shortly. Apparently they're taking a new approach. I haven't read into it, but a new approach down to Miami, travel wise, to try to get acclimated to that Miami Heat. So we'll see.
Oh, I mean, that'll help you guys score, instead of 7 points, you guys might score 9. You'll get a safety in there. But your team, so you start at the Dolphins. We've already discussed how the Dolphins just have your number and they always just get a fluky win against you every year. Even when Brady was there, it's the weirdest shit ever. So this is the game you win against the Dolphins or you lose because you always split the Dolphins. Then you go Steelers, which that game might be won by just who can hit a field goal. Like we already talked about, the Steelers have no offensive identity. You guys less so, and you both have the potential to have the best defense of the league. So that game's going to be.
You've been waiting for this topic, haven't you?
I have been. I'm ready with this one. So you play the Ravens. The Ravens, John Harbaugh is just the best coach to play against the Patriots. He always is good against you guys. Then you guys play the Packers, and then it's the Lions, Browns, and Bears. So you could potentially start 0-3 and then get 3 victories. And then that's when you start playing, the toss-up games. Well, obviously not against the Jets. Like the Jets, you're going to destroy. I still think you would destroy the Jets regardless of who you have on offense.
Right.
But so you're starting 3-3, then you're going Jets.
Look what they did last year to the Jets. It was like 5 interceptions, I think, in that game.
Yeah. And I mean, the Jets are just going to be potentially the worst team in the NFL. So I think you win both those games and you play the Jets early. You play them October, November. So especially before Wilson is back and 100%, which I don't think that would be an improvement, but at least it'd be a chance. Like now they have no chance. Then you play the Colts, which I think is a loss. You play the Vikings, who when we get to the NFC might be potentially one of the best NFC teams. Then you're playing the Bills, then you're playing the Cardinals, then you're playing the Raiders, then you're playing the Bengals, then you're playing the Dolphins and Bills again. Like, Jesus, when you get into November, like you guys might not win a game all of November, all of December, and into January. Like, that's rough. That is a rough schedule. Dude, the second it starts November 6th, you could potentially only beat the Jets. You would lose your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You would lose 8 of 9 games. Like, there's all your losses right there. So you better hope in September and October you're stacking up wins because it gets fucking brutal. Brutal.
Yeah. Anyway, so we talked about them.
But Dolphins, We'll get off your team. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just waiting.
No.
I was waiting for that.
I know you were.
I don't honestly.
The intensity in your voice got another level there.
So I don't even think we need to talk about the Jets. I mean, what is there to say about the Jets? Zach Wilson is banging his friends' moms. That's the most interesting thing that will happen with the Jets all year. I don't think. That being said, besides him having an awesome private life, I think his NFL career, like, it's done, right? Like, I can already. I think we can already
pick him up. Nobody's going to pick him up if once he's done with that team, he's done. He's going
to get the Mitchell Trubisky. Yeah, he's going to be second, third. I don't think I was cautious when they drafted him, and then I didn't see, like, with Trevor Lawrence, like, you at least saw sparks and flashes.
Yeah, he was trying, as we were saying.
Yeah, you put people around him, he could be good. Zach Wilson, I think you could put him on the best team in the league right now, and he wouldn't know what to do. I just think he has bust written.
He would throw more picks.
Yeah. It's just, I don't think he has anything. So the last one in this division and in the AFC we're going to talk about is the Dolphins. Could the Dolphins maybe squeak out and get a wild card if AFC West doesn't take 3 playoff spots? Because they would be right there with the Titans, with the Ravens, and I think that's kind of where they're at, right? Like right with the Ravens, the Titans, maybe like the Raiders, like that 9-10 win team, maybe 8, like if something goes wrong. Like, yeah, I have the Dolphins finishing 9-8. Like, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
Right. I think you're right there. They're going to be, I still think the pitchers will try to give them a run for their money, but they will probably be close, especially if what you say is going to happen or might happen in the AFC West, where they all kind of mill each other out and like get that 10-11 mark. They might have a shot. But I still think it's too tough. We kind of already have our 5-6 teams that are, so you do get that, you get that one, you get number 7 in that wild card spot potentially. But I still think that even if they beat up on each other, you get 3 out of the West. And then, I mean, the only chance they have is 2 have to come out of the West, and then they take that 7th spot.
Yeah,
because whoever wins out of the Bengals or Ravens, the other one, I think that division is weak enough to where they'll be able to get a wild card as well. But yeah. Man, the AFC is fun to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah. The last thing on the AFC before we switch over to the NFC is, did we give enough talking points to the Chiefs? I feel like they're the one in the AFC West division we kind of just mulled right over.
We did.
Will Juju Smith-Schuster and Travis Kelce and Clyde Hilaire be enough? Will there be enough of an offensive identity there with Patrick Mahomes, who, according to everybody who watches him, is the greatest quarterback who's ever lived? Will they make up for enough of the offensive, just almost like garbage points that Tyreek Hill would get? Because every game it seemed like, or every other game, it seemed like they would just get a cheap 3-second to 15-second touchdown from Tyreek Hill doing something crazy. So you're going to miss that. You didn't make up for that with Juju Smith-Schuster. He's not like that kind of player, but will they miss that so much that it'll be noticeable they won't be as offensively powered as they were with Hill? Basically what I'm saying is, was their offensive identity more Hill-based or more Patrick Mahomes-based?
I think Hill, because I mean, how do you replace a guy like that? I mean, you can't, because as you were saying, that almost guarantees him that almost guaranteed that team at least one long touchdown every game. Like, he
or at least it was there. Like, it was an option
was there.
Yeah.
The option was there, and then people will be so worried about that they can slice and dice you down the center with Kelce going down the slot, or going down the seam or whatever. So I think it definitely hurts them a little bit, but he's still really talented. I'm not saying that, and this is not me being just because I'm a Brady fan, Patrick Mahomes can't be that best quarterback ever. Because he is an amazing quarterback.
And I love Patrick Mahomes. I just hate the just anointment of him as the best ever. And it's like, he's got one Super Bowl. We did this with Rodgers, and then it's been 10 years of nothing. Like, can we calm down? Let it play out. Like,
I just don't think, I think the slack will be picked up elsewhere. It might be a little tougher for him to do because he doesn't have, those safeties heavily dropping back. And gives them a little bit more wide open in the fields. But I still think that he'll be able to get it done with the weapons that he has. I think, Juju Smith-Schuster, he could probably cover about 65% of the Tyreek Hill miss.
Hill was, yeah.
I mean, but as long as Juju Smith-Schuster does something similar to what Hill did, just run that line, make the safeties drop, the corners drop a little bit. And open up that field a little bit. As long as he does somewhat of that, I don't think really much the Chiefs' identity is changing. I think they're pretty much just going to be the Chiefs as we've known them the past 5 years.
Yep.
So that's kind of where I'm with them. So yeah, you're right. We kind of mold over them, but in my mind, the Chiefs are even with the Tyreek Hill loss. If Juju can do somewhat of what he did, I really don't think it's going to hurt him too much.
And it's one of those things where it's like, what can you say about the Chiefs that everybody isn't also saying? Like, they're still going to be one of the top 5 teams in the NFL. They're still going to be, Patrick Mahomes is still going to have one highlight play each game that you see 5 million times. Like, they're still going to be the great Chiefs that we've seen in the Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid era, but it's just going to be like, maybe instead of winning 13, 12 games, again, because of their division, because of the loss of Hill, maybe that cost you 1 or 2 games. Like, they're still going to be a 10, 11 win team. Like, they're still, their defense a little questionable, their offensive line a little questionable. That's obviously why we saw them lose the Super Bowl. I also feel like that's kind of why we saw them lose to the Bengals. Just when you rush Patrick Mahomes and get, pressure on him, he's like every other quarterback when you get pressure on him. Like, he looks like a normal person that doesn't want to be hit by a giant 300-pound man. So, the formula to beat the Chiefs is still the same, which is hit Patrick Mahomes, but that's obviously easier said than done because nobody can fucking do it. So now we have done the AFC, and that took much longer than I thought it would, but I also feel like the NFC is we're just going to breeze right through it because it's not as interesting. Let's start with NFC West.
NFC West.
So the Rams, they're returning everybody. They're running it back. They literally lost nobody. They are signing. They're doing things with the salary cap that I don't know how it's possible. Like, how do they have this stacked of a team? They keep giving everybody money. They keep getting new people. And it's like, they never have any cap issues. They never have any draft picks, but they just won the Super Bowl. Who cares about draft picks? Like,
just to go off of what you're saying, like just acquiring more people. I mean, look what they did. They got Allen Robinson. I mean, like that's another big target for Stafford to hit.
He was the Bears' basically entire offense. Like, and now we're seeing him get with an actual good quarterback. And I mean, the sky's the limit for this offense. Like, they're going to be right up there with all the AFC powerhouses we were talking about. Like, their offense and defense has been.
That's the only team out of the way. And so, kind of just touching on that, for me, they're the clear out of the West. Everybody has them going back to the Super Bowl. It's they're the best team in that division for sure. Possibly the conference that it's tough to beat. But
they literally. I mean, the only person they lost who was like big in that run last year was obviously we talked about Von Miller. They lost Robert Woods, they lost Sony Michel, they lost Odell Beckham Jr. I'm not saying all those guys were big, but they were at least big pieces of that team last year. But then, like you said, they got Allen Robinson, who at this point I think is better than Robert Woods. Maybe doesn't have the ceiling of Odell Beckham Jr., but we've also haven't seen Odell Beckham Jr. hit his ceiling because he gets injured or he misses time. So if he can be more durable than Odell Beckham Jr., I think he's a more valuable player to that offense because he's going to be around more. Like
that's a huge talking point. A lot of people overlook when it comes to the injury portion of it. And these players might be great, but if they're injury prone, that takes them out, and you don't know what they're going to be when they come back.
Yeah. Well, that's always been JJ Watt's thing, right? Like everybody loves JJ Watt, and wants him on his team because he's great when he's out there, but he's also always missed half the season. Like, so it's like, would you rather take a guy a little less talented than JJ Watt, but he can play 16 games, or would you rather have elite JJ Watt who can get you elite 8 games? Like, right. I'd rather take the 16 guy. I'd rather take an Allen Robinson over an Odell Beckham Jr. just because I know he's going to be there every week. Like,
yeah, I totally agree. And that's not to knock OBJ because he's
great.
Despite his off the field, OBJ craziness, but like on the field, he's phenomenal. I mean, everybody knows him for that catch, but outside of that catch, if you just watch him on a week-to-week basis, he gets open. He knows how to run his routes. He's an amazing player, but he's injury prone. He can't play all the time. So I'm right there with you. I would take a Robinson over a Beckham. Yeah. In today's football, when you need longevity in a player. Yeah.
So and the Rams, the big signing we forgot to talk about is they signed Bobby Wagner. Like their defense is, I mean, if they would have kept Von Miller, they would have had Von Miller, Bobby Wagner, and Aaron Donald, which at points in all of their careers, like Aaron Donald, obviously now the best defensive tackle in all of football. At a time, Von Miller was the best defensive end in football. And then at a time, Bobby Wagner was the best middle linebacker in the NFL. So now they have, I mean, they lost Von Miller, but they have potentially one of the best linebackers maybe ever in Bobby Wagner, who again, same thing we're talking about, we're a little past his prime, but still doesn't need to be at his prime because the Rams defense are so good. And he's going to be lining 5 yards behind Aaron Donald and just eating the scraps that he's still the most dangerous defensive player in the league.
He doesn't have to worry about things coming up that gut really. Cause I mean, Donald's going to swallow it up. So he gets to play a little bit more of that. All right, let me check the quarterback's eyes. Let me see where they're going here. And he can read the plays a little better instead of having to worry about what's coming right at him.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Rams and the NFC are in agreement that they have the best record in the NFC. I don't see, again, the only question mark is that lingering arm issue with Matthew Stafford. If that becomes a big issue, then they're just a really talented team without a quarterback. Then is it possible that if that does happen, like worst case scenario for the Rams, Matthew Stafford
goes out,
lingering, he's out. Do we see either the 49ers or the Cardinals being able to take that division?
The Cardinals are a much better team. Murray, regardless, is this whole thing with Arizona, he's still a good quarterback. And going with the Niners, but the Niners are going to be a good team this year. They are, but I don't see them beating the Rams because, I mean, they just have their number.
Yeah.
Like that's one of those teams that they regardless how good the Niners can be, they just have that they have their number.
Well, also talking about the 49ers, it's Trey Lance. What do you think Trey Lance will be this season? Because everybody just assumes like Trey Lance is going to come in, the 49ers are going to stay the course and be as good as they have been for the past 3 years where they made a Super Bowl appearance. Last year, they got close again. Like what in your mind from what you've seen in practice or the preseason games or even the games he's been in the past, what do you think Trey Lance is and will be to this 49ers team?
So it's kind of up in the air. It's kind of hard to touch. I mean, he's still a rookie quarterback, playing in the NFL. I mean, you can't always be. I mean, yes, it worked out for Joe Burrow. He's great. He looked amazing. But
Justin Herbert
as well. I mean, it's tough to do in today's NFL to be a rookie coming in and just be the guy.
Yep.
Something that San Fran that does have for them is nobody took the scrap of Garoppolo. So
But see, isn't that just weirder? Like, it's so weird that you still have Jimmy G on the team and he's just going to be there because the second Trey Lance starts struggling, everybody in the media, people on the team, because apparently everybody on that team loves Jimmy Garoppolo. There's going to be people on the team. There's going to be fans. There's going to be media. Everybody's going to be like, Trey Lance just had a real shit game that it's a real possibility he's had a real shit game that Jimmy G never had. So then it's going to be like, why isn't Jimmy G starting? Why isn't Jimmy G starting? He's right there. He's right there. Like,
so this goes back to where you're talking about the whole Trubisky thing starting. It's similar. Right?
Yeah,
it's not 100% the same thing, but maybe they're in the press conferences they're talking about Trey Lance going to be that next guy. So they are giving him the shot to try.
Yep.
Is that them just saying, hey, the Rams are just too good and we're not going to get out of the division? But hey, they could make a wild card. I still think I have them. I think I still have them making a wild. I do. I have them taking the 7th spot in the wild card this year. So it's they have that shot. So it is interesting. That's a tough call to make. Do you go with Jimmy G and not let Trey Lance get out there and try, especially when you have a shot at a wild card, and especially in that conference?
Well, you say it's the Trubisky thing. It's really similar to the Ryan Tannehill thing, which is, do you think we've seen the peak of what Jimmy G can be for the 49ers, which he can be a great regular season quarterback. The playoffs are more shaky. And then the consensus is that in that Super Bowl versus the Chiefs, he lost them that game by missing that wide open streak down the side, right? Where everybody's saying, how do you miss that throw? If he does make that throw, the 49ers win that Super Bowl. And then this is a completely different conversation because, he's now a quarterback who's won a Super Bowl on his throw, on his team. And who knows if they even take Trey Lance, but that one throw has basically changed the trajectory of Jimmy G's career ever since then. Now they tried to get trade value for him. There wasn't any. Also, it's concerning. 31 other NFL teams, not one team wanted Jimmy G.
Though, look at his injury that he's coming off of.
Yeah, that's another thing. The injury.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And we keep talking about that multiple times so far is, it's tough to get a player and keep a player that, why would you want him if he's injury prone? So I think definitely since they couldn't get the trade for Jimmy G, it put them in such a hard spot with what they should do with their quarterback. Personally, I think they're still making the right choice going with Trey Lance.
I do too.
He's the future. You have to go with them. You don't know where Jimmy G is with his arm. And that's kind of where I'm at that. So I still, even with Trey Lance, being, we don't know really. I still have them being a good enough team. That defense, Bosa leading it. I think they're going to make a wild card spot, especially with the conference.
Well, and Deebo Samuels. Do you even need a good quarterback with all the stuff Deebo Samuel can do? Well, he has the Tyreek Hill factor.
Is Deebo going to miss a couple games? Is he? I know he had his injury, so
I think they said let me look it up. I think they said he will be ready for week 1 because remember there was that whole big contract dispute that got settled, but I think he's good. Deebo Samuel injury. Let's look it up. So he's back at practice as of, actually good timing. As of an hour ago, there is a report of him at practice. And then 4 hours ago, they say he's still dealing with a knee bone bruise. So, but if he's back at practice and it looks like he's fully suited up in the pictures, like, why wouldn't you put him week 1? If he's back at practice, to me, that means he's starting week 1, but it could be the NFC or the AFC, the NFC West does have a lot of question marks in terms of injury because we talk about the Lamar Jackson aspect of him being a running quarterback. Let's switch over to Arizona. Like Kyler Murray is a running quarterback. He's also looks to be about half the size of Lamar Jackson.
Say smaller, not he's tinier.
Yeah. So now we're talking about injury, concerns with the 49ers, with Jimmy G, with Deebo Samuel. We're talking about with the Rams, with Matt Stafford. I think that same logic applies to the Arizona Cardinals. I mean,
I agree with that. That's
Kyler Murray, he's fast. He's great at avoiding big hits, but I'm always concerned that he gets one big hit on him and it looks like it'll wipe him out. Like he just is so tiny. He looks so much smaller playing the game than everybody else.
The smaller guys, they are a little more durable.
But the Cardinals, so we do have DeAndre Hopkins being suspended for the first, I believe it was 7 games. Is it that long or is it only 4?
I'm not sure. I don't recall.
But besides that, we have, I don't know if I can put hope or any kind of stock in a Kyler Murray past week 10, because we've seen that ever since he's been the starting quarterback for the Cardinals. Always starts great, right? Like does incredible things where you're like, this is amazing. But he peaks way too early in the season. Like you have seen it every year he started, where when it gets to the later months, when it gets to the playoffs, he just looks done. Like that playoff game they played last year he just had the worst game of his career in the playoffs. And I always hate betting on those type of players. Like that's why I will never, ever bet on a Aaron Rodgers led Packers team to win the Super Bowl, because there's been too many times where he just gets absolutely embarrassed in the playoffs. And I don't care if you put up 50 touchdowns in the regular season. If you immediately go to the playoffs and you have a losing record, which he does, like I have no confidence in you. That's how I feel about Kyler Murray. I have no confidence in him when like it comes to games that matter in the playoffs. Literally zero. All
Welcome
right. So yeah, we're back. Casino had to move rooms. Now he looks like he's wearing the same color shirt as the wall behind him. So, but to touch on what we were talking about with the Arizona Cardinals, I pulled that up in the break while you moved. DeAndre Hopkins, he's suspended for the first 6 games. So first six games of the season, and the Cardinals, let's see, their first 6 games are against the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Rams, the Panthers, the Cardinals, the Seahawks. Jesus, that is a murderer's row of games for him to miss.
Those first 3. Oof.
The Chiefs, Raiders, Rams, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost all 3 of those.
No, they're going to lose all 3.
And then the Panthers, I think they win, and the Eagles is a toss-up. Because I think, so. That's
wow.
Bad way to start.
Coming out the season hot, huh?
Oh, Jesus. But yeah, any last thoughts on the Cardinals?
No, I think we can move on.
I think the Seahawks are basically the same as the Jets, or when we get to the Falcons. I just think there's nothing to talk about with the Seahawks.
I agree.
They're complete. I wouldn't even say they're in a rebuild.
Metcalf?
Interesting thing about Metcalf is he was really trying to re-sign a contract before the season, which I think is a bad sign because he knows how shit his quarterback play is going to be this season. I mean, Drew Lock, and
that's a good point. He was trying to get his money then.
Yeah, because he knows it's going to be a letdown season. And who even is the Seahawks starting quarterback? Because it's not going to be Drew Lock, right? Like Drew Lock, they've already said it's not going to be Drew Lock. I've been paying zero attention
on him. Well, I mean, NFC is not my forte. I mean, I know, obviously some, but
it's going to be Geno Smith.
Geno Smith.
Geno Smith is going to be starting week 1 over Drew Lock.
Ouch.
So when your two options on your team are Geno Smith or Drew Lock, like, I'm sorry, Seahawk fans, like, this is going to be a rough season. But let's scoot over to the NFC North, which I feel like the Bears fall in that Seahawks category. Like, Justin Fields might be good. They got a new coach, which is good, but
it's going to be that whole Lawrence thing where I think Fields is going to do his best, but it's not going to be anything. It's not going to be worth anything.
No, I don't think their defense is nearly good enough. I don't think they really have an offensive identity, especially after they lost Allen Robinson. Like, you're also going to be playing 3 teams in your division who I think will be better than you. Like the Lions last year had the worst like Lions luck ever, where it seemed like they should have won 5 or 6 more games that they just lost last second. Like the Lions had a bad record last year, but I mean, they at least fought and were in every game. They were like the best 3-13 and 1 team, like maybe in NFL history. Like they looked good.
They didn't have a bad quarterback. And then, I mean, the tight end, Hawkinson, like he's one of the better options out there. I mean, like they're still all right.
Well, and I believe Dan Campbell is like a good coach. And I like him. He seems like a good guy. He seems like a coach I'd want for my team. Like, I think the Lions I have the Lions finishing 9-8 this year.
So right behind the pack. I mean,
no. I think the Vikings win this division.
Ooh.
I think the weak link for the Vikings was their head coach. They got rid of Mike Zimmer, and they now have Kevin O'Connell, offensive guy. Why wouldn't there was that whole thing last year where it was like everybody being like Pete Carroll, like let Russ cook, like let Russ go out there and just be Russell Wilson. Who like Mike Zimmerman and Kirk Cousins fucking hated each other. They hated each other. It was very obvious. Like Mike Zimmerman never gave any kind of respect or any praise to Kirk Cousins. So now you have Kevin O'Connell who comes in, offensive guy, like, why wouldn't he just let Kirk cook? Like, just let him be Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's not a bad quarterback.
He's my quarterback in fantasy this year. He is one of if all the good quarterbacks in fantasy get picked, I'm picking him. He's consistent. He's consistent quarterback.
Consistent numbers. And his teams are always right in that wild card like spot where they're never going to be the worst team. No, I don't think. And for how much shit he gets, him and Dak Prescott, if you look at their numbers, almost identical with identical playoff records, identical
he's
numbers.
Not playing for the Cowboys.
Exactly. Like if he was playing for the Cowboys, everybody would be saying Kirk Cousins is one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league, like they do with Dak Prescott. Like I like Kirk Cousins. I always have. And he's always destroyed my team every time they played him.
For the NFC North, I mean, the Vikings, I definitely have a wild card. Like there's no doubt in my mind they're going to make a wild card spot.
Yeah.
I do have the Packs coming out. I mean, just regardless on how much I'm not a fan of Rodgers in general, he's still a big quarterback and his.
Who's he going to be throwing to?
I mean, he can still figure it out. I mean, I think it's going to heavy come on Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones is going to be the majority of their offense. But I mean, it's still hard. Yeah, Rodgers in the playoffs. His record's not that great.
Losing record in the playoffs.
What's up?
Losing record in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, losing record in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, I still think that Bill edge it on out just because it's hard to bet against Rodgers in the regular season because he kind of just he doesn't have Adams anymore, but he's still good. So that's gonna be interesting to watch. It's gonna be a flip on those, but I mean, definitely interesting when you say that Detroit's gonna come up there. I mean, as I didn't think about that, but yeah, last year they were in a lot of those games. The record doesn't show how good they actually were.
Well, and plus it's not going to be like you always get those teams every year where it's like 8 or 9 games come down to the end where they could have either won or lost it. Like the Lions just had colossal bad luck last year where every time it was one of those 8 or 9 games where it came down to the final possession, they lost it. Like that's not going to happen 2 years in a row where they're going to lose 9 games on a last, play of the game. But that also shows that they're competitive in games. Like they were close in all their games. Going with your Packers take, I agree that ever since Matt LaFleur has been there, like the offensive identity of that team has been a run first team. Like they let Aaron Jones get all the yards and then they let Aaron Rodgers be like the West Coast quarterback that he is and just dink and dunk down the field. And then he would have that deep shot always to Devontae Adams. So I just think the loss of Devontae Adams is just going to be long ball. Yeah, it's just going to be, he's just going to have to dink and dunk his way down to, I mean, I just think it's going to be like we were talking about with the Patriots, like the Packers might be tied with the Patriots for the worst wide receiver group in the NFL. Like, they have nobody. I can't even name. They have Valdez Scantley, who is like would be the third or fourth wide receiver on most teams. Like, they just don't have anybody.
Yeah.
They have just Aaron Jones, just Aaron Rodgers. And honestly, that might be enough to win. Like, the NFC, again, isn't as stacked as the AFC. And I have them at least be in a wild card. I think Vikings win this division just because I think the Vikings are a more talented team. But I'm not trusting the Vikings in the playoffs. Like, no. I'm not trusting the Packers in the playoffs. So I don't think either of those
whoever's coming out of the North, they'll make the first round and then they're done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's move on now here we'll get to yours last. So let's go with the South real quick. Not because I'm a Brady guy, but I think the Bucs, I mean, their defense is still up there, and he's not, I mean, he's still got that duo with Evans and oh my gosh.
Totally not Antonio Brown anymore.
No.
I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name though, but yeah,
I'm totally blanking. But I mean, they're still going to be a good team. And what Brady does is he slices and dices teams. I think the Bucs take that. I think the Bucs take the South easily. But and then just to kind of touch on Brady a little bit, and the Bucs. I mean, the only downfall where a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to be a really good team. Their defense is still good. Brady's still Brady. I think they'll get past the first round in the playoffs, but I don't have them going.
Chris Godwin,
thank you.
Yeah,
it was on the tip of my tongue. But I don't think they're going to get too far. And Brady's always been about football's first. Well, obviously he's shown that football's not so much first anymore in his life. And he's still going to be good because he knows he can go into any team in any place and he can look at a defense and go, yeah, I'm calling it on the line. We're doing this, and this. He knows what's going on. So I still think that the Bucs come out of the South pretty easily. If you have any more to talk about the South, feel free.
I agree with you on your Bucs take, but my only, I guess, reservations about that Bucs team is Brady, like you said, has always been football. And then he took this weird 10-day absence that apparently reports are it's because him and Giselle are like having arguments because apparently Brady, retired and then unretired in the offseason. And maybe this is all speculation at this point, but maybe he told her like, I'm done. And then he went back and now they're having, I don't want to talk about another guy's marriage, but apparently that was the case for the 10-day absence. And then we also just have seen in the preseason, like that Bucs offensive line is just a sieve. Like they have nobody in the offensive line, a bunch of injuries. They lost obviously Antonio Brown, but they still have, like you said, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And then they also got the tight end, Rudolph, I think Kyle Rudolph as the tight end. So they still obviously have the good Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette backfield, but all these guys are getting older. They don't have
Leonard
Gronk
Fournette,
anymore.
He resurrected his career, right? Jeez.
Yeah. So all these guys are getting older. Now they have Todd Bowles as the coach, which nothing against Todd Bowles, but we've seen him in New York where nothing really happened.
He's not Bruce Arians.
No, who knows if he can be as good of a coach at Bruce Arians, just in aspect of wrangling the team together around chaos. Like everybody forgets Brady won that Super Bowl with the Bucs during COVID. So,
you say around chaos, can he bring people? I mean, he doesn't really need to. Brady will.
Yeah, but Brady's also dealing with chaos. He's dealing with the 10-day thing.
Okay, that's a good point.
Who knows if this is going to linger over the season? But honestly, I think just from a football perspective, I think the offensive line not being good is what's going to really fuck with Brady, because we've seen that when you hit him,
it happened to him in New England. He didn't have anybody. As soon as those last couple of years when Nate Solder took off and he didn't have anybody watching his blind side, man, like he had a rush. He got hit a lot more. He's still a really good quarterback. because I mean he knows the game inside and out. He's one of the best pocket quarterbacks to ever play the
Ever.
game, if not
Yeah.
the best quarterback. I think
I think he's the best.
I think
Yeah.
he's the best quarterback. Well, yes, in general, but I mean pocket quarterbacks.
Yeah.
He knows that pocket. He knows when to step in. Anyway, I still think he takes it just because it is Brady. Their defense is still legit. He still has a few offensive weapons, regardless how bad his offensive line is. If you can get that ball to Godwin or Evans, somewhere in the slot or on the sidelines, they're going to make the play for him. So I still see them just taking that division.
Well, the only other team to mention in this division, I think Falcons and Panthers both have a chance to be worst records in the league. I think the Panthers will be 5, 6, 7 games still better than the Falcons. Like, I think Baker Mayfield is not nearly as bad as people are making him out to be. But Falcons, I think we can both agree, in competition for worst team in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they win more than 2-3 games. So I don't really feel like there's much to talk about there. Panthers, anything you want to talk about besides maybe just touching on Baker Mayfield?
I think Mayfield's, I think he's a good quarterback. I think there was too much chaos for him. When he was over with Cleveland. I think he's going to still do well. And with the Panthers, I think it's going to be just a different feel for him. So I think he'll still succeed because I don't think he's a bad quarterback. By any means.
But still, and in the NFC, I mean, just record wise, I could see the Panthers being an 8 or a 7, 8, 9 team just because, like, who else is there?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they'll be an 8-win team. Obviously, you can't get 500 this year unless you get a tie in there. But I think they'll be either one game or under, one game above.
Now, with the Saints, who is really the only competition to the Bucs in terms of division title for this. Now, the Saints have Brady's number. Right. They just whoop his ass every time they play.
So their offense might not be as hot as it used to be, but man, that defense is still, that defense is legit. So you got a good point there. But again, I don't know if the defense alone is going to be able to get them out. But yeah, they do have Brady's number. They always have.
Well, it's Jameis Winston. Do you trust Jameis Winston to be the number 1 QB on your team? And we saw when he came in with Sean Payton, he was good, but Sean Payton's not there anymore. It's now, I just had his name. It is now Dennis Allen, the new coach, new hire. Sean Payton's no longer there. And the Saints always had great offenses, even without Breeze. Like, we remember that, I think it was last year or the year before, where Drew Brees was out for 5 games, still had Taysom Hill in there, still had Jameis Winston in there. Just the Saints' offensive identity was all Sean Payton. Now that Sean Payton's gone, obviously great offensive mind of the game. Will Dennis Allen step in and keep the Saints where they're at? Like, that's a big question mark. Like, who knows?
I see, and that's where my question mark. I even though they have a legit defense, I have them on the bubble for the wild card. I just don't know. I just don't know with them. That's where I'm just going to leave them from now. And that's kind of where I'll finish off on that with the South there. Just it's kind of up in the air for me.
So now to the NFC East with my team. So we've already discussed that Casino's team is the Patriots. My team is the Eagles. And I got scared because they were saying Dream Team. They were saying Dream Team. And when this happened with Dream Team with the Chip Kelly, Vince Young team, we saw how that ended, which was terribly. So now the Dream Team has cooled down, but it's pretty much like Vegas. The odds of the Eagles winning this division have dropped tremendously. Now it's like 10-1 odds. And it used to be at the start of the season, it was like 30-1. So a lot of money coming in on the Eagles to win this division, which I honestly think they do.
I think it's fair. I think that's a fair take.
They were a 9-win team last year, and they've literally gotten only better. They lost nobody. They've only added at weak points they had. How can this not be an 11-12 win team? Like, if they're not, it's all just on the shoulders of Jalen Hurts. Like, he's the biggest question mark.
I do think that they're going to take this division, and everybody's like, oh, it's the Cowboys. The Cowboys are going to win it. I have the Cowboys as, do I have them as a number? Yeah. I I mean, them, and like I said, I do think the Packers do take that division. And so I have the Cowboys and the Vikings right there fighting for that first wild card spot. But I still do think the Eagles will take it. And that's nothing against the Cowboys, regardless of how I like them or not like them. I just think who was that? You just got you hit me up and you're like, oh yeah, now
Chancey Gardner-Green.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, that's a legit player on the line there. So I agree. I think that's a big
Or Chancey Gardner-Johnson. I'm sorry.
I knew who you meant. That's what I meant. But he's I think that elevated. I think that was a piece that now they are going to win that division. And look what they did for so many years with nothing.
Yeah. Now what I always think of is even
players.
Even the year they won the Super Bowl, like their number one wide receiver was Alshon Jeffrey, and he was good that year, but every other year before after that, he was kind of like wide receiver 2 tier. Now they have two guys who can legit be number one wide receivers. You have Devontae Smith on one side, you have AJ Brown on the other side. Like AJ Brown, we've seen be a number one wide receiver. Last year, all the highlights were either Jalen Hurts running or something with Devontae Smith. So they also have Dallas Goedert. They have Miles Sanders. They have a really good offense. They have maybe top, like they always do, a top 3 offensive line, a top 5 defensive line. The back end of that defense got better, which was the weak link last year. Like this all comes down to, can Gannon be a good defensive coordinator? He does that model I hate, but sometimes it works. The bend, don't break defense. Like, we'll give you a lot of yards, but
look at the Pats for the years. They were the same thing. I mean, that's mainly what their identity is. Field goal, let them do that. I don't care, because then all it takes is.
Yeah. And then the offensive identity, again, it all rests on Jalen Hurts' shoulders. I think Jalen Hurts could be the quarterback of this team, but you also have the shadow of Gardner Minshew, who is a quarterback I know both you and I love. Like, how he's not a starting quarterback in this league, I have no idea. Like, Gardner Minshew
mustache is because of him.
Like, Gardner Minshew should literally, he could be starting on what, 10 teams right now and be better than their quarterbacks?
Easily.
And again, but then again, that is kind of a nice security blanket to have, because if it's not working out with Jalen Hurts, I don't think they would, or God forbid an injury happens. Like, I'm super confident in Gardner Minshew stepping in and just being as good, if not better, than Jalen Hurts. So I think the sky is the limit for the Eagles. I haven't been this optimistic for them since the year they won the Super Bowl. And even then, I wasn't that optimistic, because the year prior to that, they weren't good.
This is not me trying to knock on the Cowboys. I mean, they're still going to be a good team. Like I said, I have the Cowboys and or the Vikings or Pack, whoever comes out of that division as the wild card, being, the number one wild card spot. I think you're right. I think the Eagles just have more going for them. I think that
my whole thing is the Eagles were a 9-win team last year, and they lost nobody and only got better. How can they not be better? Last year, they were 9 wins.
They've gotten better.
And now to talk about the Cowboys, specifically Dak Prescott, has owned the Eagles ever since he's been the Cowboys starting quarterback. Last year, they whooped the Eagles. He threw like 5 touchdowns on us, but he lost that big offensive tackle, was lost to injury and he's going to be out for who knows how long. They lost Amari Cooper. They lost Cedric Wilson. They lost Corey Clement, which wasn't that big of a deal, but they also lost Blake Jarwin. So they lost almost their entire offense from last year. They have a weakened defense, or a weakened offensive line. The Eagles' defensive line is one to be reckoned with. Even the Washington has a really good defensive line. So they're going to get beat up in their own division. They have nobody to stop them. It's going to be all on the shoulders of Dak Prescott. And after that embarrassing way they lost that game last year, with him running up the middle when they had no time. And it was just like what
are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing? That was what led to them losing. Like, the Cowboys have only gotten worse, but they've owned the Eagles in the past couple years, and the Eagles have only got better. And then to talk about the other two teams, Washington, Carson Wentz's quarterback. I've seen this story too many times. I don't trust him. He just will lose you 2 or 3 games just by dumb bonehead plays like that last year with the Colts, where he's doing interceptions on the goal line that he's just throwing it right to somebody with nobody around. And you're just like, what are you doing? He's going to lose you games by getting sacked and taking you out of field goal range. Like, we've seen that happen. I just think he's a liability. And then the Giants are just, you have Daniel Jones, you have no offense, no defense. Like, you're clearly in competition for worst team in the league. Like, anything to add for Washington or Giants? On them. That's what?
That was going a long while back. Like, that's my pick for the worst in the league.
Worst in the league? I think it's a competition between Giants and Falcons. Maybe Jets throw in there as well. Maybe Seahawks. Like, yeah, they're all going to be trying to get number 1 first overall pick. But so we've gone through all the AFC, all the NFC. So just really quick, just run through who you're picking to win each division again. Or here, do you want me to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I think Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs are coming out of the AFC West. I think the Chargers will win the division, and then the Chiefs and Broncos will be wild cards. I think the Bengals come out of the North with the Ravens just right there. I think AFC, it'll be Colts. I think Titans and Jaguars are going to be a lot closer than people think. And then I think out of the AFC, it's East, it's Bills. I think Bills finish with the best record, followed closely behind by that AFC West team. Am I missing a wild card? I'm not.
No,
right?
you fit your wild cards. You hit the 2, and then you said either Ravens, Bengals, whoever doesn't win that one. And that is legit my exact same picks here.
Yeah.
We just have a different pick to see who wins the Super Bowl there.
So again, you're picking the Bills, right?
I'm picking the Bills just because obviously I do think they'll have that number 1 seed. Playing in Buffalo is tough, regardless the Chiefs and the Chiefs and the Broncos knowing how to play in that weather.
And I'm obviously picking the Broncos just based on how the NFL is going around that kind of thing.
And that's a fair pick. I'm not mad on that pick at all. I'm just,
but
I guess I just see the Bills more with my team, and that's where I'm just leaning towards.
All the money, though, if we had to bet like our life savings, you would either bet on an AFC West team or the Bills for the Super Bowl, the AFC, right? I love the Bengals. Yeah, I love the Bengals. I like the Ravens. I like the Colts, but I don't see any of those teams beating anybody from the West or the East
Correct.
Being the Bills. So with the NFC, I have the Rams again winning the NFC West. I have the 49ers with a wild card. I have the Vikings winning the North with the Packers having a wild card. I have the Bucks winning the South, and then the Eagles winning the East. I have the Cowboys just missing the playoffs. So the 3 teams for the wild card are 49ers, Packers, and I guess I do have the Cowboys in as a wild.
I was going to say
now it's 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they could squeak in with I think they're going to be right there with the Saints, with the Cardinals, with the Lions for like that last 8 to 9 win pick.
Got it. I'm still. It's tough to say that I think the Cowboys will take that last wild card spot. I was saying I actually have them being a little bit better than that, just because I mean your guys' division in the NFC East is not super strong outside of those 2 teams. Yeah. So I just think that they'll pick up a few more wins that they'll need. The only difference, I guess, out of when it comes to who wins and the wild card,
you're flipping the Vikings and Packers, right?
Flipping them.
Yep.
It's hard to go for me, even though how much I'm not a fan of Rodgers. It's hard to go against him when it comes to
with the regular season. I mean, he's
regular season.
He's right there with Peyton Manning as like the best regular season quarterback ever, right?
I mean, and everybody's saying that he doesn't have Adams anymore. That is right, and he's lost some offensive power with his wide receivers. However, last year they were Aaron Jones. It was an Aaron Jones show. Yeah, and then with a few Aaron Rodgers throws.
No, it's a good.
Even though I mean, he did put up a lot of good stats Rodgers did, but I mean, most of that was to either Adams or that short throw. But I still think they're going to be all right. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty identical here outside of our Super Bowl pick. And then I think we both agree coming out of the NFC, the team going to the Super Bowl is the Rams. I mean, it's just kind of hard to.
Well,
I know
it's like nobody's on their level.
I know you say the Eagles. I mean, I know you would hope for that, but I just who's on that level with the Rams? The only people on that level with the Rams are the teams coming out of the AFC.
Yeah, no, I think the Eagles have a legit shot at beating the Bucks, getting revenge for last year, just because I think the Bucks offensive line just won't have an answer for the Eagles defensive line. I think they have a shot against the Packers just because we've seen Aaron Rodgers fold in the playoffs. I think honestly, the only, and this is just from a biased standpoint of I'm an Eagles fan, the only two teams I'm scared of in the playoffs are the Rams and a Kirk Cousins led Vikings team, because Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott have just owned the Eagles like the entire time they've been in the league. When Kirk Cousins was at the Redskins, he always whipped our ass. Dak Prescott, I think the Eagles and Cowboys split this year where they each win one game. And then, the playoffs, I think it just comes down to Rams and then either Broncos, Chargers, Chiefs, or Bills. But I agree with you. The Rams, unless the Matt Stafford injury is more severe than we've heard it is, then who knows who's coming out of the NFC if Stafford's out. Yeah. But anything else to add?
Something I want to add. Out of that topic, no. But then I guess we can MVP. I think there's, I'll be honest, two clear-cut favorites here. I think it's Josh Allen or Herbert. I truly do.
I agree. I would agree with you there. I think
last I checked, they were both. I think my notes here. Yeah, they were both plus 900.
Well, I mean, the NFL MVP is now just strictly a quarterback champion. Like, it doesn't matter what anybody else does. So this is really, who do you think is going to be the best quarterback this year? And it has to be Justin Herbert. It has to be the Bills. Or I think if my Broncos pick does come to fruition, where the Broncos are one of the best teams in the league, I think Russell Wilson will just get. He's
got weapons.
He's got weapons, and we've seen him. He's never really had a bad season as a quarterback, so he could be right there with those two. But I think those are great picks. And then last thing before we wrap up this episode, the only game that we'll play before our next episode of this is Bills versus Rams. So who do you think is winning that first Thursday night game? Bills or Rams?
Oh, man. It's going to be a tough one. I mean, this honestly could be Super Bowl
preview. Easily. I think that's why it's opening night, because we could see this again.
This season is going to be wild with all the changes and everything. But I got to stick with the Bills on this one. I think that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
It's tough for me to see Josh Allen going down there and not winning.
I completely agree.
It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a wild start to the season. It's going to be a heavy offensive game. But then again, those defenses they're both top 5 defenses. Like what?
And top 5 offenses.
Yeah. It's
top five.
This is one of the best ways, if not the best way, is 2 potential Super Bowl winners starting off the season in a juggernaut, both top 5 offense and defense. This is going to be fun to watch.
Honestly, I think I would have more confidence in the Bills if they were playing in Buffalo, but obviously they're playing in LA with the Rams because this is the Rams, Super Bowl, celebration basically. But I also am always cautiously optimistic about Super Bowl teams having all that kind of build up to them celebrating and then having to play a game right after that. It just always seems like. And plus the Bills have something to prove. How they lost in the playoffs last year to that Patrick Mahomes miracle, it was 25 seconds or whatever. That has to sting, and it just has to. I mean, it changed the rules, right? Now it's each team in the playoffs gets a shot at scoring a touchdown. So that was a direct result of everybody feeling cheated that we didn't get to see a Josh Allen.
And definitely with that fan base,
Yeah.
They're hungry, man. It's that was a kick to the teeth for them for sure.
Well, honestly, if my team isn't, I mean, I think they're going to be in Super Bowl contention this year, but I don't think they have a shot of winning it. But if they don't have a shot of winning it, I mean, I would be rooting for the Bills. Like, what would be a
Same.
better
I mean,
story than the Bills?
like I said, same division, Patriot fan. You know, I've despised watching the Bills win for so long, but I would love to see them win. I would love to see that franchise win. Josh Allen win. He's been one of the best quarterbacks since he's gotten in the league. Like,
and he's fun to watch.
He's fun to watch. He's fun to watch. So I'm if obviously my team I don't think is gonna even make the playoffs this year, but I would 100% like to see the Bills pull this off. And again, that's not me trying to be biased because that's who my pick is.
Yeah. I think we would also feel the same way about the Chargers, right? Like we would like to see that franchise get a Super Bowl like Justin Herbert, but
oh yeah,
I feel like those are the two like teams that I'm rooting for, especially because those are my AFC teams that I'm rooting for because obviously my team's in the NFC. So yeah.
But I mean, just as a sports fan, like going away from my, where I think my picks are, those would be two teams that I would like to see win it. But then going on an actual who's going to win, I do still think the Bills because I just think they're that good.
Yeah, and they have the most stacked roster in the league.
I know that's the hot take on everybody. Oh, the Bills are going to win. The Bills are going to win. And how often does that actually happen? But I don't know.
But sometimes it does happen. Sometimes it does.
Out of the past this couple years where they're close and a lot of people were picking them, I was like they're going to do good. They'll make the Super Bowl. I never said I don't think I've said they were going to win the Super Bowl. Maybe I did last year, but this year feels like it's the year. It does. It does feel like the year for them.
Yeah. And I feel like this went much longer than either you or I thought would happen. I'm dying in this room. It's so hot. I think just because my computer's like 1,000,000 degrees because this has been recording for so long. But this was a good first episode of the Balls and Bros podcast. I believe we discussed doing this twice a week. I think maybe we need to work out those details more.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I know we're shooting for Sundays. For sure, Sunday mornings before games, or did you want to do Mondays?
Again, we'll talk about this off the air. We've gone too long.
Fair enough.
But we're probably going to be doing a 2-a-week show, a previews, and then a review of like the games we watch. So I believe we'll do another one. Like I said, this is why we picked the Rams-Bills game. We won't be doing another one before Thursday. I'm going to try to put this up by Wednesday. So we'll probably do a show just to preview the Sunday and Monday night games for opening week of the NFL. But like you said earlier, it's going to be a great season, a lot of moving parts this season, a lot of people changing teams. And obviously the AFC is, stacked. We talked about that. It's going to be a fun season. So you have anything else before we sign off, Casino?
No, thanks for tuning in.
All right. Bye.